All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a report, and what I want to see is we're going to drag a couple of fields in here. I'm going to drag cost and profit margin. So what I have here is a report that shows me a column with the cost of each camp and a column with the profit margin. And what I actually want is to combine these two fields into the one column. And to do that, I need to use a subquery report. So I'm just going to remove this field. And I'm going to add a calculated field, and I'm going to call this label. And I'm going to call this cost. And what this is effectively doing, as you'll see in a moment, is creating a label. So what this is doing is saying, okay, in the adventure demographic, the cost was 10 million. And what I'm going to do is rename this field to be value. Okay, so we can see I now have demographic, label, and value. So now what I want to do is repeat this. So I'm going to add a union query, and I need to line up my fields. So this is what I have in my main query, and to add this in, I need to pair up my fields again. So demographic to demographic, I'm going to add another calculation, which basically says profit. Okay, so it's the text that says profit, and then I'm going to add my profit value. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have demographic in the one column, I'm going to have a column that has the words cost and profit in it, and I'm going to have a column that has the values for cost and profit. So what you'll see now is my subquery, and we've combined the cost and the profit into one column, and now what we can do is total that up. And if we want to, we can create a subtotal. So if we do that on demographic, we might suppress duplicates and add a subtotal. So what it's effectively doing is adding our cost and profit together to show what we actually invoiced for each demographic. Okay, so this is also a very useful type of report, but generally speaking it's only required for very specific scenarios, and most of the time you'll know what those are as you come across them. We don't really have a matching scenario with our ski team tutorial data that I can show you, but just know that it's used to combine two sets of results. A common use for it is sometimes in your database you might have a transaction table. Now, storing all of the transactions forever and ever can become, quite large, so the table will become very long. And some systems will actually archive those results into a transaction archive table just to keep things speedy. So what you might find you have is if you want to combine current transactions with archived transactions, you actually need to join those tables up or union those tables up in order to have them showing in the one result. So that might be a scenario that you would use this for. Alright, so next we're going to have a look at the minus and intersect. Now, as I said before, these are created exactly the same way. So what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to create my list of customers. Alright, so there's my list, and I'm going to filter those by this year. So I'm going to show this calendar year's filters. Right, so we probably don't have that many, so we only have 50. So the next thing we're going to do is add a subquery, and we'll go with minus. So in the master query, I'm going to filter out athlete IDs. So I'm actually going to remove my customers based on the athletes I see in my second list. And then you just need to define your filter. Okay, I'll just define that. And I'll call this last calendar year. Alright, so you'll actually see that I have 7 rows. So what this is doing is it's showing me that I had 7 customers this year so far that didn't come in last year, so they're brand new. So what we've done is we created this list, and remember it had 50 values for this year, and we reduced it because 43 of those customers actually came in last year as well. Now if we did the same thing with an intersect, so if I just delete this query, and I create an intersect instead, and we filter it by year, we're just going to go to advanced settings and change the filter on that. And we're going to make it last calendar year. You would actually see we have an intersect of 43 rows. So what's happening this time is we're removing any customers that didn't come in last year that did this year. And we're just showing the ones that came in both last year and this year. So that's our intersect. So these are really, really handy, and we find that people don't necessarily use them as much as they could. So we encourage you to try and use these and see where they would be useful. They're really great for removing or combining records. Alright, so the last thing we were going to have a look at is an advanced subquery, and I'm just going to delete this one here. The only difference with an advanced query is you can pick the data source and the view. So for example, I could add on data from my CSV onto this report. So what you'll see here is I'm going to join by athlete ID. Hopefully we actually don't have an athlete ID, but we'll pretend we do. And what happens here is I now get my CSV fields on the left. So if I go back to the master query, it's my database fields, and here it's my CSV. So it's just a really, really easy way of combining multiple data sources worth of data in one report. Okay, so that's a subquery report. The next thing we're going to have a look at, if we return to our storyboard, is what we call report on report. And this is something that's new to 7.2, and basically what it allows you to do is create a report and say, all right, now that I've built this report, I'm going to let people use this like they would a view. Okay, so we're going to pretend this is a view, and then people can build their reports based on mine. So it's kind of similar to how a CSV works in that you import it in, you create it, and then people can build reports off it. So what we're going to do is just create a report, and I'm going to call it my athlete detail report. So it's going to be big. Maybe we'll get rid of demographic. Okay, so here's my report. It contains a fair bit of information about my athletes, and I'm going to save that. So we're going to call it. So what I'm going to do is put that in a special folder, and then in this settings menu, I'm going to enable this use as view. And this is this report on report feature. So basically what happens is this report now becomes available as a view. So if I save this, what I'm going to do now is create a report. And you can actually see I've got my athlete details here. So this is the report that I've just created. So other users can now use this report. So you can see my fields there. And they can build other reports based on it. So we can have a look. Now, something to be aware of, and this is something for more advanced users, really this whole functionality is for advanced users. Something to be aware of is this means that it has to run the original report query and then create this report off those results. So it's kind of double dipping. So if we view the SQL, you'll see it's just not your standard looking SQL, because what's happened is it's run that previous report and then it's using that as the source. So it can slow things down. There are specific reasons you might use this particular function, but generally speaking, if you can achieve it a different way, you probably don't need to use this. So there are only very few use cases where you would come in and enable this feature. But that's how you use it, and it's very easy to enable. And let's just return to our storyboard.